Hello. Hello. My name is MUAD Dylan, or sometimes Woody. And yeah, I just wanted to take a few minutes to lay out what I would like to do with this here channel, aside from posting my music, which will be being put up very soon. I just haven't had uh, the the wherewithal to put stuff up, and I want to make some edits to the effigy demo before I put it on YouTube. But yeah, I've been making music for like, damn, 24 years, 23 years, 23, I think 24 years. I started when I was 10, I think, and I'm 34 now. I'm an ancient being, obviously. And yeah, I am a very political person as well as a very artistic and musical person. I identify as a leftist. Um, and by that, I do not mean I identify as a Democrat. Um, though, unfortunately, I usually vote that way as there doesn't ever seem to be another viable option. Um, more on that later, probably, but I believe in socialism. I believe in democracy very deeply, and I identify as an anarchist. And by that, I do not mean that I don't believe in any sort of laws. Anarchy is defined as the great Ben Jordan points out in one of his videos for DIY Tech for Anarchists. I highly recommend that anarchy is simply a philosophy oriented to anti-authoritarianism, anti-authority more generally, and anti-corporate in a lot of senses, and anti-oppressive. And for me, that's really important. I've experienced oppression in certain small ways in my life, even as a white male-bodied human. However, I am gay and bisexual, and not always been out about that, but there you go. I grew up only dating women, knowing that I was also attracted to men, and that was like a pretty big inner turmoil for a lot of years. And yeah, finally in my 30s, I'm able to admit that, even though I have never been opposed to it and very much supported other people coming out. I was very afraid of coming out myself. Um, Anyways, I also am gender fluid, and that has been an interesting thing through my life. The first time I tried to express that in any way, I was 14 and bought girls' pants because I thought they looked better, and I was was really into emo, and I was made fun of by my friends, which is fine. But you know, um, little things add up. And then probably the most I've ever faced oppression wise was growing up. I'm Jewish. My family is Jewish on my mother's side, so I'm considered a Jew, and I practice religiously um, in my own woody way. I have a lot of opinions about Judaism, but anyways, that was like a big thing I was bullied about growing up, which again, like, not the end of the world. I got through it, but it did like definitely fucked me up a little bit. And some people, you know, would make jokes about that, and it was fine, and then other people would, you know, take that to mean they could take things further, and it would just escalate. Um, so yeah, I'm also highly neurodivergent. Um, I have, or highly is, I don't know what that means, but I have bipolar disorder pretty intensely. Bipolar 1. Um, I have pretty severe chronic PTSD, and I have been learning lately that I also have pretty serious ADHD that I am attempting to get fully diagnosed, but I, you know, meet all of the things. Because of all those fun. Oh, and I'm also a recovering heroin addict and cocaine addict and meth addict. Um, a lot of addiction issues. Yeah, meth is more recently. If people who haven't seen me in a long time seen me, that was something I dealt with more in the last few years, and I've thankfully gotten over. And yeah, this project is kind of a way for me to like hold myself accountable, even just through seeing myself. Um, but more than anything, this is a way for me to start putting myself out there into the world. I have been very withdrawn um, in the last 5 years, decade, um, and I don't want to be. And I've never released music until now. I've never tried to sell my art until now, and I want those things. And for once, I don't care if other people want to do it with me or not. I'm just gonna do it. And yeah, so growing up, I was really into music. I was really into punk specifically. I listened to a lot of good shit for a kid, like Richard Hell, Television, uh, The Clash, um, Minutemen, Talking Heads, Gang of Four. I know that's like post punk or whatever, but The Cure, The Smiths. What else did I like growing up? Animal Collective when they came out. Um, that's not punk. What am I saying? Iggy Pop. Um, yeah, tons of shit. Anyways, and so I was in punk bands. I used to go to local shows. Um, Shout out to the Eagle Hawk idiots. Um, I love you all. And yeah, so I was in punk bands growing up. My next door neighbor was my best friend, and they and I also use they them pronouns. Um, he him is fine, but that's my preference, which I'm sure I'll explain at some point on here. But yeah, and I should also say I'm very, very open about my stuff because, um, as I'll explain in a minute, I am also someone who is a psychologist. Like, I have a degree. I have worked quite a bit in the field for the last like 6 or 7 years. Um, and yeah, my view on it is that stigma, which is the negative judgment of someone for having whatever identity factor, like you could stigmatize, like racism is a form of stigma in a way. Um, like negative thoughts about drug users is stigma, or people with mental health disorders, but also like something like, oh, all people with bipolar act this one way, or all schizophrenics see things. These things are highly, highly variable. And, like anything, stereotyping just serves to create ignorance around these topics. And so um, I encountered a philosophy regarding that of open, honest, proud, um, that I can't remember who exactly it was, but they had done a large amount of research and kind of philosophical musing about stigma, and come to the conclusion that stigma is perpetuated by people not talking about things, and so being open and honest about things while also being proud of who you are is the best way to fight it. And so I have started being incredibly open. I was always fairly open, but now I'm really open about my stuff because I think it's the only way I'll ever be understood. Um, and that's important to me for whatever reason. So, just pulling a spring for this noise box that I'll explain in a minute out of this toy gun. Um, it's not a real gun, just so you know. But yeah, so I was in punk bands growing up, with kind of the same crew of humans. I um, I miss those humans. They're all really good people. Um, I mean, we're all flawed on this planet, and yeah, I do wonder what happened to all of them. But anyways, you lose touch. Um, Grew up in playing in punk bands, and then I started getting into indie rock, and as my taste changed, so did the music I was making. And I slowly started getting more and more into hip hop as well. I had somebody my senior year of high school like put thousands of songs, buddy, on my iPod, I think, because I'm from ancient times, and uh, I still discover artists that I realized were on that playlist that Alba gave me. It was good shit. But so I got really into that stuff. Um, and as I was doing music, and around 16, so at 10, I started playing guitar, and that was what I played in punk bands. I was too anxious to sing at the time. And then, at the same time, I was getting into drugs. Um, Started with weed, and then and alcohol and nicotine, and quickly progressed to include like amphetamines and opioids and benzos. And by the time I was in college, I was a pretty big mess. Um, and some stuff had happened in my life that had kind of brought up stuff So I've had trauma issues my whole life as well. I was sick as a kid and paralyzed, and that used to be really hard to talk about. Now it's like kind of nothing, and I'll explain why in a second. But yeah, I was fully paralyzed, like full body paralysis, for about a month, I think, 3 weeks or a month. They told my family it could be several months to several years, even. My mom is still pretty, this stuff is hard for her to talk about too. Same with my dad. And yeah, I miraculously recovered really quickly. Um, they really thought I was going to be paralyzed like that for potentially many years. But yeah, and people really showed up. A lot of people were praying for me. A lot of people were visiting me, like friends from school. My parents knew, my extended family, my family. At the time, I had a lot more siblings, so to speak, than I do now. Um, or I guess I still have them. They just are dinguses. Um, so I recovered from that really quick, but I was my as a result of that, I ended up having kidney stones. The disease I had was called Guillain-Barré, and so Guillain-Barré is also involves a lot of nerve pain. Your nerves have the sheathing of your nerves has to regrow. Um, Kidney stones. I don't think I need to explain why those suck. You pee them out, and they're rocks. So I was on opioids. This was year 2000, I think 1999 onward. No, 2000 onward because it was in the spring. Um, and so, yeah, I've been on opioids since the year 2000, basically. More time on than off, which at this point, as someone in recovery, um, that's a choice I've made. I do take methadone maintenance, and I'm, like I said, proud of that. I've had a lot of success with it. Um, and I've heard all sorts of narratives about that. What I'll say is, I don't give a fuck what other people think. I used to, and that really fueled my addiction. And yeah, so yeah, in my 20s, I need to start making this noise box too while I talk. I was very addicted to drugs in my early 20s, and so I went to rehab in first in like Mass and DC and all over the East Coast, and then I, inevitably relapsed. I was living in DC, and yeah, I hid that from my oldest uh, stepbrother and was living with him. It was very kind of him and his partner to open their home to me, and I fucked up, and that sucks. But yeah, so I was unable to keep staying in the sober house I moved into, and was shipped to Arizona and did about a year in rehab there, and that was really intense. I both like credit that time in my life with how I got clean or like approached wellness more and like started thinking about that. I also was pretty horribly treated in the rehab I went to. Um, it has since been shut down by the FBI for fraudulent billing. It's called the Sober Way Home. And yeah, long story short, they would just kind of like not treat anyone who wasn't like the gym bro very well, which, whatever. Um, So then I finally got out of there and went back to school and got a degree in critical psychology, um, which is to say the psychology of like a critique of mainstream psychology, psychology of like oppression and how to help people dealing with that. Um, and from there, I really focused in on harm reduction as well. And from there, tried to do that work in Arizona for a bit. Started not doing well again. Had to come back to the East Coast and move to Vermont, um, which is where I am now. And I've bounced around here a bit, and yeah, but eventually I met a really amazing partner, and now live in the woods near Burlington. Um, and I like it, but I'm hoping to move to a city not too long with them. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of a quick story of Woody. And yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say is that um, during the pandemic, I also got really into electronic music. And 2020 would mark a big change for me musically in that my main instrument kind of switched from the guitar, which is still my primary like performance instrument. But I switched to being really into synthesizers, and over here have like a few of them, and now make electronic music. And my name is MUAD Dylan doing that, and I love that name, and I love making electronic music and ambient music and any sort of deep loop with these things. I'll show them to you. Noise music. I make punk with it still, like Suicide. Um, yeah, I got a few things going on over here. And I play the drums now too. I have a drum set, bass, piano, ukulele, really like any strummed instrument. I struggle with bowing still, but that's the next challenge. And yeah, so part of the reason I'm ranting alone in my room is that I very often am thinking about politics. I watch a lot of political content. I, um, read political content. I analyze shit. I theorize, and I've always been really into like the structure of government. Um, I was in like civics honors and U.S. history in high school, and did like the youth in government program and shit. Yeah, so I bring this up because I live in America, and if you're at all aware of the world right now, you know that sucks a bit right now. In this year 2026, um, and I think we need some direction. And I by no means think I'm like the best, brightest person on the planet who knows the most about politics and who should be listened to more than anyone else. Um, but I probably am those things, so you should probably just listen to what I have to say. And yeah, um, yeah. I think we need to restructure the government in the United States. Seeing like mass poverty, mass police brutality, mass, Trump is making a paramilitary organization out of ICE and, wants to cancel elections essentially, from what it sounds like. And, you know, the the founders and all their wisdom were really just people my age who were winging it. They, have this whole thing about like controlling the executive and stuff, but they didn't imagine what would happen if the whole government or the majority of the government was compromised all at once. They assumed that people would stay separate, that like secret societies wouldn't, um, or maybe they did intend this. They were largely Freemasons, but um, you know, they didn't really plan for what we're seeing now with like the Epstein files and stuff, where potentially what we're living under is a massive network of blackmail and crime, like the most heinous crime, not cool crime like drugs, fucked up crime like sex trafficking and rape and those things. Um, Sorry, YouTube, I'm not gonna, yeah, play your game. Um, that shit was not planned for, and that shit is everywhere. And I have some theories about like how that plays out and what that looks like with modern technology and people in government who have access to really high level surveillance. But I think we all can tell from the Epstein files that like at least some amount of our politicians are compromised. And so that alone, I think, necessitates like a constitutional convention. But then on top of that, we're experiencing a failure of congressional leadership that was not planned for, where Congress is so unable to act from partisanship in any real way that political strategy just becomes creating a deadlock to maintain the status quo because nobody's working together, everybody's just blocking each other. And that inherently isn't functional. It doesn't keep up with modern problems. And frankly, I think we just need to deal with lobbying. Lobbyists should not be legal. That should just be illegal. Um, and yet, yeah, like, and what I envision for restructuring the government, like being a congressperson would probably not be as like glamorous. Being the president probably, I don't believe in having a president. I believe in having an executive council. But like that, is going to be a lot different if we ever end up doing anything about this. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know. But yeah, it's not going to be like becoming a millionaire like it is now, and I don't think it should be. Like that is what keeps them acting like insane assholes, essentially. Um, and so, I think that there's an opportunity there for people to start standing up, making demands, and like showing true leadership. And I don't really see a lot of people doing that, frankly. And I don't think I'm that great, but I think I'm good enough to fill in until someone better comes along. So yeah, we need a constitutional convention. We need it now. The elites are not going to stop using technology to control us, surveil us. We need to account for data acquisition. And frankly, in that realm, I think it's a very simple um, fix. No AI based on public data through social media. No AI based on unlicensed copywritten material. I mean, copyright sucks and needs to be done away with in large part, but the theft of intellectual property from AI is the biggest heist in history for sure. And as a creator, that's fucked up. So I don't know. I think we need to like start brainstorming and coming up with ideas like this, where it doesn't matter that we're not the like best at something. Sometimes you just gotta go for it, and it'll work out. Like me banging a screwdriver into the thing. I made a hole. Yay! One sharp hole. We can do this. Yeah. I honestly am curious how other people think and feel about this because I inherently don't think any one person can offer a solution. I think it's something that has to be collaborated on. And I will say, for what it's worth, like these ideas are not just mine in large part. I'm either stealing ideas from other people or not in like a theft way, but in a building off of those ideas way, which for the record is inherently different than AI because AI is not a human, and so it is not doing this in the same way. And frankly, like when I consume a piece of music, I don't immediately have the ability to just regurgitate it with slight changes to match that artist's vibe, and that's the whole thing. It's a disgusting stuff. Anyways, but yeah, like I said, I have ideas a lot about this shit, and I don't do anything with them, and that's a failure on my part. Like, we all need to step up. Um, yeah, I'm just kind of 10 more minutes of doing this. So yeah, I would really encourage anyone to like comment or reach out directly, message me here. My email is rwm. Actually, you know what? Just email muad.dylan@gmail.com and we'll get it. And I don't know, like it's dark times right now. Things are not feeling great. And I know I have a real tendency to isolate in those moments. And I would like to encourage everyone to not be like me, including me, and to just like try and find ways to enjoy life still. They want us to be afraid and cowering in our homes, isolated. But even if you're stuck at home like I am, I'm out of work right now. Like, you can do shit. Like, I'm trying to start a business of selling samples and music and art, um, and noise boxes, and who knows what else. Um, and I didn't do that for a lot of years because the people around me didn't have the same dreams as me, and I would try and, co-opt them into being a band with me or something. They'd get frustrated because they just wanted to have fun, and I wanted to, like, pursue it and live the dream. And um, I finally realized, like, that's fucking stupid. And I used to think I'm too old to play music at like 26 or 27. 6, 7. Which is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Sorry, the person who said that is someone I will always very much care for, but that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. People play music until they're in their 60s. Bands form, people in their 40s and get big all the time. All the fucking time. And it's not even about getting big, anyways. It's about doing something you love with your life. And yeah, my New Year's resolution this year was to not let the memories, or I call them brain recordings, I have of other people discouraging me get to me anymore. I'm going to do what I want to do with my life. And anyone who tells me not to is not someone I really want in my life. And that is it's definitely the top 3 best decisions I've ever made for myself. If not the best decision I ever made for myself. Um, so if you have an idea, just fucking do it. Don't let people stop you. And that's how I feel about this political shit. Is the government wants the status quo. They want to keep us where we're at. They want to stay where they're at because it enriches them, and just like have things keep going. Whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, they all want capitalism specifically, but just keep on chugalooging. Regardless of if there is, not all of them, some are socialists, Bernie, AOC. Anyways, but that's kind of the issue, is none of them see the moment. None of them see this crossroads humanity is at of we can either work together and like really fucking do something with our species, or we can let idiots like Trump run shit and then we'll be dead in 1,000 years. Like, we will be. And so, like, why not just do it? Why not just try other shit? Why do we have to keep trying this when it's failing so many people? And the answer is that we don't. We just think we do. When I decided to not go back to work, because I worked with the health thing, I hit my head really bad and some other stuff and mental health, and I decided I wasn't going to go back and instead focus on back to like peer support and psychology, and focus on making art and music that I want to, and writing and doing the things I actually care about while I'm alive. Because if I don't, I'm going to get to the end of this life and just be mad and resentful that I didn't get to do what those people got to do because I was just focused on making money, or I was just focused on like housing, or I was just focused on grinding, or I was just trying to, start a family or whatever it is. Like those things don't have to hold you back. You let them hold you back. And so stop letting things hold you back. Stop letting the government hold you back. Like they say we can't just go start a new country somewhere. Like why the fuck not? Like I want to live in a very different system. Who wants to like fucking get a bunch of barges together and go start Ocean City? Huh? Let's fucking do it.